All right, welcome to another Insider Notebook here on Bleacher Report. Chase Palmer with you. I've loved this. We've done one almost every single day leading into tomorrow's 4 Eastern trade deadline. I'm in the Mountain Time zone, so 2 Eastern or 2 Mountain Time. For me, that deadline will hit. We're going to go through a bunch of trade-related topics today. You can always jump in the chat. It has been outstanding each and every show we've had where you guys have put so much in here for us to answer. I'll do it between each and every topic. We have today's show, and don't forget, I will be on tomorrow, pretty much throughout the course of the entire day on Bleacher Report, jumping on, telling everybody what's happening, what I'm hearing around the league, what deals are happening, why they happened, who maybe just missed out, what's the fallout of each move. We'll go through all of that tomorrow when we are going through everything leading up to that deadline. Today, we're going to talk about the Jayden Daniels injury, just brutal for Washington Commanders and Daniels himself. What does that mean for the Commanders moving forward this season? Not just with Daniels, with everybody else in that organization. Major concerns in Cincinnati, just a locker room that was a lot of work for Zach Taylor, who I think is a very good football coach, but a lot of work to do behind the scenes with some cracks in that locker room right now after that massive loss, just a crushing loss to the Bears. Eagles make another move. Surprise, surprise. We'll talk about Jalen Phillips and why that move happened and maybe who was close and what this means for Philadelphia and why they gave up what they gave up. The Patriots, a team to keep an eye on over the next 24 hours, I'd say, and I'll tell you why. And maybe some teams that are being more aggressive or less aggressive after the fallout of what happened Sunday with some respective games across the league. I'm always going to be looking at my phone and seeing exactly what's happening, but not much right now. Jumping in the chat is already on fire. Eagles done. We'll get to it. The Jayden Daniels fallout. Let's get with this. Just a gruesome injury, the dislocated left elbow. Not completely determined yet if his season is over, but there's a chance, a very good chance that it is. The MRI and all of that is going to further confirm the timetable that Jayden Daniels is going to have. Luckily, there was no break from the initial x-ray, but obviously further testing is continuing with that dislocated left elbow. I want to get this out there first because I remember during the draft process talking to all of my sources around the league, whether they're offensive coordinators, quarterback coaches, head coaches, GMs, scouts. There wasn't much of a concern in terms of being injury prone, like some people are bringing up right now with Jayden Daniels. He only had, I think, two ankle sprains and a concussion in college. He was always very good if you talk to scouts about avoiding contact and maybe kind of avoiding bigger hits. Obviously, the NFL is a different animal, but he's had a couple of injuries he's had to deal with here in his second season, and this one is considered by many I've talked to just a freak injury that ended up happening, late in the game. I know there's arguments whether he should have been in or not, but that's neither here nor there where we're taking this. This impacts the deadline for the Commanders in a sense. I think as I've been on here the last couple of days talking with all of you, I've said, I don't know if they're really buyers. Maybe they are. I think they were kind of looking at pass rushers a little bit, but they knew how much they had given up in recent moves that they have made. And now it looks like they could potentially be sellers, to my understanding. They have 2 picks in the first 4 rounds coming up in April. They need to get some capital back, and where they're at right now, this could potentially be some ways you could do it. And what happened is with Daniels and what's happened with some of the other injuries, though, might limit some of their chances to do that. I'm not sure the commodities that they have are all that overly appealing to teams that could be buyers. Maybe they could get some later round picks for some of these guys, but it doesn't seem like they have too much that they could offer in terms of teams looking to buy high on some of these players. I think you could look at the offensive line. I broke this down the other day about how there are some teams looking at guards, and they have a couple, and whether it's Nick Allegretti or Andrew Wiley, those are guys that I brought up, I think, last week that could be potentially guys that could be on the move. There's some teams around the league that are still looking for guards, to my understanding, whether it's the Ravens, Seahawks, Broncos, Texans, Niners. Chargers are looking for offensive line help. They were before this Joe Alt injury, and now they're looking for help to come back a little bit further if they can. They win again, but man, they lose Alt, which is massive for that Chargers team and Justin Herbert. And so there are some possibilities of maybe the Commanders moving somebody from up front. I think the Browns have ability to maybe move somebody from up front, a couple of veterans in there on the interior of their offensive line. Maybe Evan Neal with the Giants could potentially be on the move. These are some players that teams are calling about to see where the market stands, and maybe those are two in Washington that could be part of this. And then you also have the Marshawn Lattimore ACL. which hasn't been, I don't think it's been completely confirmed yet, but there was a chance they could maybe part with somebody in the secondary. That may not be the case now with that injury. So I'm just telling you kind of how some of these things shift. With Tunsil battling that hamstring, there was a thought that Brandon Coleman could have been somebody they could have maybe dealt for maybe a pick, and maybe that's not the case either. So with the injuries, it makes you go, there may be more sellers than they were before this Jayden Daniels injury, but some of the other injuries that they're dealing with also might make it harder for them to be sellers at some of the positions that we're looking at. But maybe there's somebody like, maybe somebody wants to go after Deebo Samuel. I don't know. Maybe somebody wants to go after Kinlaw. I don't know. I think they'll be maybe listening when I said the lack of picks, and we'll see what Adam Peters does with the way that this season has just not gone the way that they've expected to go after going to the NFC Championship game a season ago. I understand why they went so aggressively in moves for Tunsil or Lattimore. They have this dynamic quarterback who many believe is a top 10 quarterback already in the NFL on a rookie contract, and you try to strike with that, but it just has gone the other direction in year two, and they might be looking to move a piece or two. We'll see what happens before the deadline. Before I get to Cincinnati, I'm looking through the side of my eye here, and it's just like kind of like flying about what's going on. Yep, now it is confirmed by Rappaport that it's a torn ACL. I told you. All right. Lattimore, complete waste of money. I do want to say there are some people going like that move at the time, aggressive move. The Saints didn't think that they would get that much for Lattimore. It really hasn't paid off for them. And we talked about a number of these moves, I think, on some shows last week about some of these not really working out all that much. What does Jerry talk about the trade he made? Yeah, I've been trying to dig at that to some people in Dallas right now because Jerry went on SiriusXM and said he made a trade. But he hasn't said what the trade is. And nobody I've talked to seems to know what the trade is yet either. So we're waiting, I guess, right now. I'm waiting for a call back in the text to see. But Jerry said on SiriusXM that he did make a trade. And let's see what else we got here. New England needs pass rush. I'm going to get to New England. Make sure you stick around for that. With Patriots trade rumors, make sure you stick around for that. Breece Hall, I think the asking price is a little high right now. I'll get to that, but he might be greater chance of staying as opposed to departing. Tucker Kraft out with a torn ACL. Yeah, brutal. That's just massive for the Packers there with losing him, and it changes just a couple of things from what we thought they could do as an offense. What else do we got here? Panthers moves. I maybe somebody up front, but I don't expect a major move. Defense is playing better, by the way. Hendrickson to the Colts. We saw that. Let's get to that here. Major issues in Cincinnati. A just crushing blow. Joe Flacco throws for a career high 470 yards where he could barely lift his arm during the week, and he throws for 4 touchdown passes. That should have been the story, but no, it's the defense who was on pace to be historically the worst Bengals defense in franchise history, are now on pace to be the worst defense maybe in NFL history in the Super Bowl era. It has just been absolutely awful with what's gone on that side of the ball. And it was maybe worse in the locker room when reports coming out of reporters that were in that room, just defensive players even laughing, kind of joking around, but refusing to talk to the media. A lot of guys not wanting to speak. A lot of the guys gone before the media gets in there. The offense being very, very frustrated with what happened, and people in that building kind of going, well, why isn't the defense standing there going, we're very, very upset with what we're doing, letting the offense down. But that's been essentially the case. And we've seen very quickly now how things have kind of changed in that locker room. You have 3 players that have requested kind of their departure in recent days, right? You have Logan Wilson, who's a captain of this defense, who is asked to be traded because he's lost his kind of starting role. You have defensive tackle McKinley Jackson, who would like to be playing elsewhere, who's a 3rd-round pick in 2024. And he would like to be, kind of on the move. Mike Peno, he went over to the Chiefs after asking for his release. Many teams have been calling about guys on this side of the ball. And I would expect maybe a move happening, even though that's something we just don't have happen in Cincinnati. Things have turned a corner, it seems like, because teams keep calling, whether it's the Rams or the Niners or the Lions or the Colts or the Eagles. They've all called about guys on that side of the ball, and they've all called to see if guys are available, whether it's anybody that can be pried out of there. The marquee name, obviously, is Trey Hendrickson. I think he was just speaking to the media a little while ago, saying that it's not really in his hands. Oh, look at these. Yeah, Chase Brown was not pleased about what's happening at the end of that game and not getting a stop. But to Trey Hendrickson, I'm getting the sense that he's ready to play elsewhere, even more so than before. I think they're willing to listen. My colleague at The Athletic, where I work and do a show with, Diana Rossini, said that they're looking for a 1st-rounder and potentially more. Talking to people around the league, that's almost borderline laughable. in their opinion. So I don't think anybody's paying that from just the couple of people I reached out to for their opinion on where it's at. I'm assuming teams are still going to be calling. Teams are still going to be interested in if that price is going to go down, what it would take to get Trey Hendrickson, because I do think there are teams that are still interested in acquiring him. What I also want to say before I move on is I think people are starting to ask the question about Zach Taylor's future, and I think Zach is a good coach. I think he's a good guy. I think he's done a really good job in that building. He's an offensive-minded coach, and there's never been any questions about that offensive side of the ball. But man, what's happening in that locker room is something that group on that coaching staff needs to find a way to fix quickly. And we will see, with as bad as it's gotten within the culture of that room, it seems like on the defensive side of the ball, and what's happened and where they stand. Do they make a rare move at the deadline, which is something they just don't do? Teams are calling to see if they're going to change their colors in that sense. What do we got? Odell Beckham to the Steelers. Okay. Any Chiefs trade rumors? I think after you saw that game, Drake Miller MVP, I think you saw after that game that Brett Veach is going to be looking still up front. I think he is still looking up front. I think one of the things that could hurt the Chiefs in the postseason, like we still believe they're going to the postseason, even though where they sit, I believe in eighth place in the AFC, is if teams are running the football well against them, and you saw the Bills do it again Sunday with James Cook. Patrick Mahomes and that great offense is off the field. And I think we're seeing the number of snaps that Chris Jones is having to play. He's not being able to be as impactful as he has been in years past. Maybe that's a part of it. Maybe you try to find a way to get bigger up front on the defensive side of the ball. I know they were poking around at running back. I'm not sure if that's as much of an issue as a defensive front. Keep an eye on Brett Veach possibly doing something up front. Bears trade 2 or 3 first rounders for Crosby. Crosby's not going anywhere. Crosby still wants to stay there. What else do we got there? Looking forward to your Patriots. Love it. James, what's your favorite food? That's a nice one. Sushi, probably. Any Giants moves? The Giants have kind of changed a little bit. Obviously, I think they were looking at receiver a couple of weeks ago. That's not really the case anymore. Thibodeau's still not going anywhere. The price would be astronomical, I guess, if you want to try to offer it, but I don't think that's happening. Colts news. Ballard's been quiet, but I think we saw, it didn't. A lot of people are saying, by the way, it's just kind of one game for what happened against with Indy in that game. All those turnovers, just regroup, but we'll see. Chubb to the 49ers. They're still looking, obviously. Mikael Williams gets the ACL now. I mean, they're just so banged up. They're going to be one of the more aggressive teams, and I'll get to a little bit more of that. Texans rumors. I know they were looking at offensive line. We'll see if that stays after what happened and transpired against. I don't think they're going to overreach. I guess that makes my point. Jalen Phillips. Let's get to them and the Eagles, because Philly's making a move. We're talking about a lot of moves that could potentially happen. This one actually did. We talked about it on Friday, I believe, on the show, where I said keep an eye on Philadelphia, and I said on Friday I think it's a third-round pick is what the Dolphins are asking. Well, both of those things happened. So if you were Philly, they wouldn't have wanted it to happen that way because they thought the asking price was a little high. I think a lot of other teams that were looking for the ability to acquire Jayden Phillips, I think they wanted that price to go down. Philly ends up paying that price. Now, it is the third-round pick that they acquired in the Hassan Reddick deal, I want to say. So it's the later, probably, of the 2 picks they'll have in the third round. If it was their own third-round pick, that would possibly be... If it was their own third-round pick, it'd probably be toward the end of the third round, right? Because the Eagles should probably go deeper into the postseason than the Jets, say, or do a better record than the Jets. So the Eagles end up giving up that Jets pick, which is the higher of the 2, which could be closer towards the top of the third round, is what they end up giving. There were other teams definitely interested in Phillips, certainly. What I think is important about this and why Philly gave up the pick and why the Miami Dolphins were willing to eat up some of the money to make this happen so they could get that third-round pick is this. He had a season, maybe his best season of his career, with Vic Fangio before he tore the Achilles in 2023. And so he gets reunited with Fangio, where I said on here, I think on a show last week, that Howie Roseman does listen to Vic when it comes to some of this stuff. He's very good about listening to his coaches, especially someone that has the pelts on the wall like Vic Fangio. And they get this deal done in the middle of the season, acquiring talent and making them have an impact right away, sometimes difficult, not when he knows the system that Vic Fangio runs. And he might be their best edge rusher now right away and can get running very, very quickly because of knowing the system. And I think that's another reason why Philly was more comfortable giving up the pick as they try to repeat as champions. I think that's a big part of this. He's better against the run than a lot of people think. So he really helps them on the edge. I think they have a deeper rotation now with Brandon Graham and you get Jalen Phillips in. They're deeper in the secondary with the Jair Alexander move and the Michael Carter move, and now they feel like they can be more versatile back end and have some more bodies and evaluate Vic and his group to see if they can get better on that secondary where they still have a problem at number 2. I don't know if Howie's making any more moves. This is a big deal to give up a third round pick. So I would assume that, maybe Howie doesn't make another move. You never know with Howie. But this is the big one that they were waiting for on an edge rusher, and they land their guy in Jalen Phillips. With this Eagles situation, I wanted to ask co-pilot, where Philly stands, because Howie is usually so aggressive. So we asked co-pilot to show us where the Eagles cap space allocates for this year and how many draft picks they have for the next 2 years. And this is what we found. 2026, 8 picks. 4 of them are via trade, whether Reddick, Williams, Sweat, or Becton. And then also traded away 2026 third rounder for Phillips. 2027, 8 picks, all their own, still present. In the TAP allocation right now, total cap allocations, $279.76 million. That's 11th in the NFL. They're not overswinging. They got some big deals coming up on the horizon, by the way. Available cap space, $11.6 million. That's 19th. Dead cap, there's a good chunk there in 82. But we'll see where Philly goes from here. I don't think they make another move, but we'll see. You never know with Howie. All right, what else we got here? How do you think the Bears are going to do? A huge win for the Bears. There's definitely a cultural shift there. I wouldn't be surprised if Ryan Poles tries to do something. We'll see if he can, but we'll see if he tries to do something on the defensive side of the ball. Tua back to Alabama. Bears rumors just kind of told you that. How do you think the Bears are going to solve that? Geno Smith trade. Geno's not really, I don't think, going anywhere. I don't know who's trading for Geno. Steelers look washed. Nolan Spick back as well. Yep, that rotation's pretty deep. Nolan should be back shortly. That was playing into their equation about how they want this to go, and they love being deep at the edge rushers in Philadelphia to be able to try and rotate as much as they can. Report was that Eagles' third-round pick for JP was their own. Was I wrong? Now, I believe it was the Jets pick that they ended up giving up. The Eagles are trading their original third-round pick. Sorry, I said it backwards. I've been busy today. Sorry, I apologize. It was their original third-round pick. That's why I said it the way in the first half, that it is going to be the later of the two, which actually helps Philadelphia in that sense because, sorry, I got crossed. Apologies for that. What else do we got here before we move on? Waddle to the Steelers. I think Waddle's price is high. I think they're listening now. They were not listening before when it was Chris Greer. Now that it is Champ Kelly, they are listening. You saw how how things kind of changed pretty quickly from that move happening in Miami and then the Jalen Phillips deal getting done. I think teams are calling and listening and trying. I don't know if any of them are going to pay what the Waddle price would be. Jacoby Myers to the Steelers. I think teams are interested in Myers. I think the price is higher than they want to pay right now. We'll see if that move ends up happening. Minka to the Pats. I don't see the Pats doing that, but I'll get to the Pats. Maybe Jerry lost his mind. That's always puzzle. Atlanta Falcons. I don't see them buying right now at all. Really. Jags. Everybody thought they were going to be very aggressive up front. I don't think anything's happening with Brian Thomas Jr. The price is a 1 and probably and then some. Don't look for anything to happen there as you track Jacksonville. They still could be looking somebody on the defensive front possibly, but they gave up picks for that Travis Hunter deal. They certainly did, and so we'll see how aggressive they are. But I know they're looking on the defensive side of the ball as they make calls around. Lions options, they're still looking for somebody opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. It doesn't need to be a world beater, but I think they're still looking to see if they can add somebody on that side of the ball. And I think they'd love to be able to get a little bit deeper up front. That was a big issue, obviously, with their postseason run a season ago and just how thin they were in the front seven. Keep an eye on them still trying to make something happen. They're one of the teams that has been more aggressive in terms of making calls and trying to see what's out there. Denver news, it's been kind of quiet in Denver. Doesn't mean nothing will happen, but my understanding has been kind of quiet there. So I get to the Patriots. A lot of you are asking about the Patriots. Let's try to do that. Off the ball linebacker edge for Bucks. I've kind of heard that, but I haven't heard anything really all that loud about it just yet. Waddle to the Panthers to pair with T-Mac. I don't see that happening with them. They've already been aggressive in the number of assets that they've put towards being around Bryce Young. I don't think they're going to trade away more picks and put even more there. What do you think about Anthony Richardson to the Raiders? First, he has to get healthy, which the orbital fracture is just an unbelievably just an awful injury, actually, while you're warming up for a game. I don't know if Chris Ballard's willing to part with him just yet. I think they'd like to keep him and see if he can develop, but he could be on his way out after this season. I don't think that's happening now. Yes, sir. Let's talk Pats. Let's do it, huh? How about that? Let's go to the Patriots because they have so much money. They really do. They have almost $49 million in cap space, more than anybody else in football. And the reason I wanted to make this a topic is this. In Jalen Phillips going to the Eagles, I mentioned there were other teams that were interested. The Patriots are one of those teams. And if the Patriots are willing to be that aggressive to be one of those teams that was kind of towards the end, possibly, I don't know how close it got, but one of those teams that was interested in on Jalen Phillips, that shows me that they're willing to be somewhat aggressive, possibly, for the right player during this time period before the trade deadline. They have the money to do it. I think they're in a different spot than a lot of people believe. We all thought they'd win a handful of games this year, but talking to people there, they believe that the vibes behind the scenes are outstanding, that the locker room is outstanding, that the meetings, everybody's accountable. It's just a cultural vibe that has switched so quickly, and everybody has bought in very, very quickly to what Mike Vrabel's doing. I wouldn't be surprised if they go out and look for an edge rusher. I think what they did also in acquiring some extra picks with the two moves that they made with Duggar and Keon White, like creating some more sixth round picks. They got two of them, that gets you more ammunition to try to go and make a move if you can. I had this down from somebody I talked to in the league. Keep an eye on them after the Falcons game. If they win that game, they could potentially be more aggressive. Well, they won it by a point thanks to a missed PAT. And Drake May has gone and really put himself borderline into the MVP conversation. So they're in a different spot right now, and they have 10 draft picks right now in 2026. They have 11 if White plays and is an active, if White is active in 7 or more games the rest of the season. So they have a lot of picks that they can deal. And I believe, if you remember how aggressive they were going to be in free agency before the start of the season, in this first offseason with Mike Vrabel, they were willing to pay to get players in. They were willing to offer Chris Godwin and some other players. So there's been aggressiveness there in the past. I think they understand that they're a much different destination than they were before. And I would just really keep an eye on what they're doing. They're looking at edge. They're looking at possibly running back depth help. I'm not sure about the skill guys. It's a group of wide receivers that, maybe they add a piece. We'll see. But I don't think they really want to overpay and build this thing the right way. But I think they do want to look maybe up front defensively. And they have the money and the resources to do it. And we saw that they were maybe aggressive as being one of the teams towards the end of that situation with Jalen Phillips. So I think that's why I make them perm. Thoughts on Jerry Jones' comments on Cowboys trade finalized? As it happened, I've been sitting here talking to you guys. I don't see it. Yeah, I don't see it. I'm just making sure. Jerry says he's made. He said he's not, maybe not done either. We'll see. All right, we still have to get through this last one, and we're running a little short on time, but I want to see what else you guys have. Man, this Odell Beckham you just keep putting it in the chat over and over again, huh? And it just won't stop. We can be the most aggressive in the trade deadline. Fitzpatrick to the Chiefs. I don't think that's really something they're looking for, honestly. Just making sure there's anything here. Texans need to make a trade. They'd love to maybe they'll go after one of these guards that are there. I know that was they were one of the teams that was getting linked to maybe some of these guards. Waddle to the Steelers. A lot of people would like Waddle. The Bills would love Jalen Waddle. The Bills would love Chris Olave. We'll see if the Rashid Shaheed price goes down a little bit or the Jacoby Myers price goes down a little bit. And one of those players gets moved. I think those are more likely options for somebody like the Steelers or the Bills or one of these teams looking to maybe ask around about a receiver. But we'll see if those prices go kind of down. The Rams, they kind of made their move in the secondary, I'd say. I think the Rams are in a great spot, by the way. Matthew Stafford, you ask around the league, he might be playing the best football of his career, which is saying something, certainly. What else do we have here? Get to the bottom here. If Chris Ballard doesn't make a trade and we miss the playoffs, he's gone. He's gone. We need to make a deal. I do think there is a chance with where they sit that they're more aggressive in making something happen on the defensive side of the ball than they've been in the past. I think secondary is certainly something they're looking at. The problem is there's a number of teams looking at corners right now and trying to call around about corners. I think that's one of the names that teams are calling about. Cam Taylor-Britt in Cincinnati, if things have gone completely sideways, if they're willing to part with somebody, there's just not a lot of corners out there to fill your need. And I think that's kind of part of the thing that the Colts are part of as well. What else do we have? Do you foresee Myles Garrett being moved? AJ Brown, I don't see Myles Garrett going anywhere. I really don't see AJ going anywhere. I never put anything past Howie, but I think Myles, the dead money is just too astronomical to part with him. All right, this last topic of aggressive or passive, I wanted to kind of, maybe this could have been at the top, I don't know, but the asking prices, and you heard me say it about the receivers, across the board right now are high. Philly did not want to pay that for Jalen Phillips, but they ended up doing it. The prices are very high right now. And we'll see. This is sellers holding on to their last chance to get the best value they possibly can from these buyers and who's going to blink first. And I think that's playing a part in this. Like Jermaine Johnson, teams have called. Certainly. It's like a second rounder that they want. That's a very high asking price. Jacoby Myers, high asking price. Pittsburgh's looking at it still, and they're looking at other, options because that price is high. You look at who else was looking at? Breece Hall. His price is still pretty high if people are willing to part with that, because you're going to have to get him a contract as well because he's going into free agency. So I think they're looking for at least a third-round pick for Breece Hall, and you're going to have to get him a contract. So these prices are high. I think teams that are still aggressive, very aggressive. I think San Francisco is still going to be aggressive towards a pass rusher. I'd be surprised if they couldn't land one. I think the Chargers might be aggressive towards helping their offensive line, even though it's a little out of character. It's just where they stand as a roster right now. And I think Brandon Beane might be, look, doesn't mean a deal gets done with any of these, but I think the teams that are really working the phones hard, I think the Bills are trying. And so we'll see what ends up happening. But I just think what has changed a little bit is teams like the Commanders have shifted a little bit. You know what I mean? Have the Raiders, after a devastating loss in overtime, shift a little bit in their thinking? We'll see. I don't think Pete wants to fire sale anything. But at the same time, will they drop the price on Jacoby Myers? We'll see. Before I go, see if there's anything. I need the best receiver who is the fastest. That's always a good player. Should the Packers trade for Njoku? I do think he'll be available. And the Browns will make him available for the right spot and the right situation. That's actually a pretty good point. Packers, Tucker Kraft was playing like one of the best tight ends in football, a huge part of that offense as well. And now Jordan Love loses the guy that really has been a yak monster, great in the screen game, great up the seam. Maybe they make a move for something like that. I do think they're going to take into account where he's landing. That's how much the Browns think of David Njoku and how much they love him. But, they are going kind of young, and where they're building around that young group of players that they have in that group that they brought in this year, which was actually, I think, a very good draft class. Eagles, we already did that. Henderson can't pass block, which, you mean Hendricks? Who? Hendrickson? I don't. Okay. Olave to Denver would be fire. Man, there's a lot of teams that would love Chris Olave, but it looks like he's staying put. That might be the most most logical thing to happen with this receiver group. I keep seeing this like over and over again about Beckham. Maybe we can just drop it. It'd be great. All right. Mark Andrews is somebody that could potentially be on the move, but the way things have shifted now in Baltimore, I don't know if they're going to try to wait this out. You saw how much different that offense is when they have both tight ends and the fullback back. That's the way they love to play, and we'll see. That's the way they love to operate that offense. Steelers 124. I don't know. We might have to block you out of the chat with this. It might be a little too much that we got going on there. All right, everybody. We will be with you throughout the course of the entire day tomorrow. I'll be jumping on there. Make sure you tune into Bleacher Report really pretty much through everything. It's going to be an outstanding day of coverage. I'm going to be dropping in for trades throughout the entire time. Make sure you tune in. It's going to be just awesome. Odell Beckham? Question mark? That's awesome. Well, the Packers got their top corner. The problem is there's just not a lot of top corners out there. Everybody take it easy. Enjoy the little bit of time you have before we figure out who lands where, and then all the deals are final by 4 o'clock Eastern tomorrow. Everybody have yourself a nice Monday.